Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to the new Rokk Around the Clock. This is 8 o'clock on the 27th of May. And we've got, this is our new home, time-wise, and a slightly different look to Rokk Around the Clock than you'll be used to. So essentially, we're using a new system that's been released on Restream, which is the new home for all of my content, and it allows me to have really good interview and guest shows. Although technically, it's not quite as good as I've been used to Rokk Around the Clock being, but that's all changing, and you'll see happening over the next couple of shows that will get the actual initial intro and all the audio and the music and everything back again, because I loved all that stuff. It was good, wasn't it? Any road up, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So similar format to before. We're essentially going to cover the news, and then if we've got any time, we may have a bit of a discussion about some of the other stuff that's been happening. Every week from now on, I'm going to be joined by a well-known content creator in the Stadia and Cloud Gaming community. And tonight I'm really pleased to be able to bring on board a very well-known and recognizable gentleman who I'm sure you'll all instantly recognize as none other than Tommi, now Tommi Danger. Hey, Tommi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you, buddy?
I am very well, thank you, on this incredibly sunny day. And
yeah.
And I happen to know that you and I live relatively close to each other, don't we? Certainly in terms of, you kind of imagine us all in different parts of the world and up and down. But if I was to jump into my car right now, which of course I'm not really allowed to do, I guess I'd be with you within about 50 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like as the crow flies, it's probably only about 40 odd miles, I reckon. But thanks to the lovely roads of Devon, it does make everything take a lot longer than it should. But yeah. I think actually we are probably the only two that I know of that are. Oh no, sorry. Adam from Stadia Source is southwesterly, but I mean for Devon wise, I think we're the only two Devon dumplings that are representing. Yeah,
representing the southwest, and it's a very beautiful place to live, Tommi. So I think
it is. Yeah,
an amazing place to live. Are you from this part of the world originally?
Yeah, born and bred down here in Devon. Although, to be fair, I've moved around an awful lot. I've lived southeasterly as well. I've lived in Spain for 5 years.
Nice.
Yeah, moved around quite a bit.
Yeah, well, it's the only way to avoid the tax, mate, isn't it? Let's be honest.
If only I earned enough to have to worry about that.
Apparently, we're the custard boys, according to One to Escape, Duncan. I've got one of the things that I love about this system is they've got a separate chat app that speaks into my ear, Siri-like.
So that's pretty cool.
Literally tells me the chat messages, which you've got to get used to because you're talking to someone, all of a sudden a woman starts yapping to you. But it does, which doesn't happen very often to me. I've got to be completely honest with you, mate. It's been many a year.
But they've kept it realistic enough so that it's happening while you're talking to people. It's still in the side of your ear.
Yes, exactly right. It does catch me out. But we've already been joined. So we've got Ray. Hi, Ray. We've got of course, One to Escape, Duncan, who is nicknamed us the Custard Boys. I'm sure that means a lot to you. And my good friend and Friday night cohort Lee from Stadia Mania. So hi guys, thanks very much.
Hello
for joining us this evening. I might have to turn her off in a minute. She's starting to get on my nerves already. Bless her. So what we're going to do, Tommi, is we're going to before we look at the news, I'm keen to know a little bit more about Tommi Danger, because this is your big new brand.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been toying around with it ever since I started Stadia Arcadia. Really, I had that brief stint where I decided that actually I didn't purely wanted to do Stadia related stuff, and I created new tags and everything around the Tommi Danger show, but I never really put anything into it. So I ended up just closing it all down because it was there, but I was getting random emails that meant nothing about it. So I got rid of it all. But Tommy Danger has essentially been my gamer tag on every platform since I was about 17, 18.
Brilliant.
So it's something that I've had for a really long time. And I took that as my Stadia name when I got my Founders Edition. I went straight for that. Oddly enough, I actually did try and get Stadia Arcadia, and this is day 2 of when Founders launched. I got my code on the second day. My controller came the third day. Yeah. Stadia Arcadia was already gone. I added them as a friend. They've never added me, so...
Oh, that's just rubbing salt into an already open wound, mate.
It is, yeah. But the idea behind this was purely Stadia Arcadia is still going to keep going. That is going to be just exclusively Stadia content.
Sure.
It's something that may change in the future if I get this channel to become what I want to do with it. Then it would be silly for me to split that out in 2 ways, because it's going to be a cloud-centric brand, if you like. So what I found is that, and I'm sure we'll touch on this later, so I won't go into it too much right now, but one of the issues I have with Stadia is I like to play multiplayer games when I'm doing streams and so on, because A, it allows you to interact with people that you're talking to. They can come and join your games, but also they just tend to be a little bit more fun to stream, because very sort of narrative heavy games, you need to pay attention to a bit, and that means that you're not necessarily talking to the other people or taking notice. So my idea was that if I have some other platforms available, that some games may be better suited to that, and I can still sort of encompass everything without saturating my Stadia content.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes, because I'm just waiting for all my branding and everything to come through, and that's why I haven't put out any more content yet, because I don't want to start it with one look and then change it again so quickly. So it's there. It will get promoted as soon as I got the graphics, and then we'll see how it pans out.
Oh, that's really good. So you've got somebody working on a whole new look around the whole concept of
graphic designer that somebody that I knew back in school actually is working on it for me at the moment. So I've seen some concepts, happy with how everything's going so far, just trying to get the sort of finishing touches done, and then I will do a grand reveal. And it's not Mike Hunt, no.
No, I did spot that. He was trying to catch my ears out. Sadly for Duncan, I'd already turned it off, because I realised it wasn't as great an idea as I thought it might be when I've got so much chatter going on. It's great to see. Thank you very much, Duncan. I appreciate that industrial language ahead of Friday. Gets me in the mood. So let's have a look. We've had an interesting couple of days in the old Stadia news, for sure. We obviously had the big old Google announcements yesterday. So I'm just going to disappear in favor of let me see, let's pull this up. The next slide, if I can get the right one up. Here we go. So I'm going to disappear and reappear as
somewhere else.
Carefully prepared. And spotlight. There we go. So community blog. It was a little later, wasn't it, this week than we've become accustomed to seeing it.
Well, they don't like consistency, though, do they? That is the Stadia way. Keep everybody on their toes.
I think you're right. Actually, there does seem to be. I don't know that it's by design, but I think equally, I don't think they're completely worried if they're not smack on, are they? So we had a few things. Obviously, we had, as I put in the little caption on the screen here, we had Elder Scrolls Online, a couple of games released, PUBG rank mode, some information on Mortal Kombat Crew 2. It was a fair amount, wasn't there?
Quite a lot to give it in the way that they did, I feel. I read over it, and to be honest with you, until I read the show notes for this, I'd already forgotten most of it because of the way that they presented it. I found it really just poor.
It essentially was drip fed through, wasn't it? And, there's a rather than a big burst of and look at all this information, which is, kind of like I look at it like you go downstairs on Christmas morning and there's a whole bunch of presents, and what you don't want is, right, here's your first present, and then 3 hours later, right, here's two more for you. You get to dinner time, it's like, oh, and here's your big present. Oh, great, but you've already forgotten the ones that you had earlier in the day.
Exactly.
So yeah, that is something they might need to work on. So if we take it from the top, we've had two games that we already kind of knew were coming. They'd said it would be this month anyway, didn't they?
Yes.
Jotun and SUNDERED. SUNDERED Eldritch Edition, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, and Jotun or Jotun Valhalla Edition. Have you had a chance to have a look at these, Tommi? Is it something you would normally buy?
So, to be completely honest with you, I would say no to something I would usually buy, and that is because I've found that I kind of have to pretend that I don't have Stadia with this statement. But before this, I didn't actually get an awful lot of time to play games because, generally speaking, whatever you wanted to do meant that you turned on your platform of choice, waited for some updates to happen, even if it was for something that you weren't planning on playing, and then load a game up. And by that time, a good half an hour has already gone past, and you've got to go and do something else. So these kind of games I've actually left by the wayside for quite a while now. I used to love indie games, or not necessarily indies, just the smaller games, because I find a lot of the time, like, art styles and music scores, all that kind of thing, tend to be a little bit more focused on than the bigger AAA titles. And that tends to be purely because they go for all-out graphics and stun you visually that way. And I can't think in the last probably 5 years or so of many games that really blew me away with, like, wow, that was such an impressive piece of art, really, to get through from start to finish. A lot of them are multiplayer games that I'll play a bit of the campaign and I'll either not bother finishing, or it was just not right for me, but then I love the multiplayer side of things. So these smaller games actually fill those gaps, but I just always kind of look at them sometimes now and be like, I don't, out of my budget of what I can spend, do I really want to spend it on something like this? Whereas I know that next month there are some much bigger games coming. So I'm in a bit of a weird transition for that at the moment.
No, I think it's a fair point. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of mobile games. And if I see a game that looks to me as if it would live happily on a phone, I probably am not going to be that interested in it. Just that's just a personal thing. And I know that obviously a lot of people that have grown up on Nintendo and Sega consoles, they're used to platform games and this kind of graphic, but it's never been my thing. I always went straight to sort of PC and the big first person shooters and the big story based games with movie style graphics. So I'm kind of in the same place as you. I think it's they're reasonably priced. They're sort of $15 and $20, which I think translates to about £13 and £18, something like that, I think.
Yeah, so Jotun is $11.99 and SUNDERED is $15.99, if I remember rightly. Okay,
so they're, as you rightly said, they sort of fill a gap, but we know that we've got some big titles coming up. Not least of which, of course, is the next one on our list, which is that was mentioned yesterday, which is Elder Scrolls Online, which is frankly going to be, I think, one of the big hits of the year as far as Stadia is concerned. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so it's odd because I played this game. Actually mentioned it yesterday on the Stadia Source video that I played it when it very first came out on Xbox, and having been such a sorry about the motorbike if you can hear that.
Oh, no worries. People got on
it. I played it when it first came out because it was an Elder Scrolls game and I loved Skyrim, and I had only ever played Oblivion after playing Skyrim. Skyrim was the first of those kind of games that I got into. And then I played ESO literally from when it launched for about 3 weeks to a month. and I then uninstalled it. I was like, nah, you know what, this game's not for me. It was broken in so many ways, so buggy. I just didn't feel any kind of connection to the game.
Sure.
And I've never ever looked at it or thought about it since then. Once I heard that it was coming to Stadia, I was like, right, well, this game's been around for quite some time now. So clearly it has a good sized player base because they're still making content for it, which is always a good sign. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start having a look at this on YouTube. And I have to be honest and say that the game looks like a different game. Whether or not ZeniMax have sort of rebuilt the game almost, that's what it certainly felt like when I started watching compared to the memories I had of the game. And it looks like there's an awful lot more to do, a lot more depth to the story. That was the main thing I remember, was I was just running from place to place doing quests that had no impact on anything. Yeah. And that for me is like a game like this. If you're not interested in the story, I don't see the point in playing the game, because you're just literally grinding levels for gear.
Yes.
But then you're not doing anything with it, much like how, unfortunately for me, Destiny 2 felt that way. It was such a big disconnect from the first game that I didn't feel like I knew what was going on. I didn't have a clue what was happening with whatever the story was supposed to be, and it put me off playing the game. And I put about 1,200 hours into Destiny 1, so that transition should have been relatively easy for me, and it just wasn't.
No. And of course, as the chat is shouting away at us, it's actually going to come as a free-to-play pro game. Although with the small caveat that, of course, the very latest expansion, which we're currently looking at on screen now, Greymore, that will be a payable expansion alongside the free game. But we do get Morrowmind, which, again, I know very little, to be completely honest, about Elder Scrolls, and as you, I played a little bit of Skyrim, quite enjoyed it, but I'm not a massive fan of sort of swords and sorcery and dragons and witches, even to the extent that I struggle to watch an entire Harry Potter, and much to my daughter's disgust, because they've watched them all about 40 times each, as you do at that age. But yeah, I have to say, though, in terms of a little bit like yourself, Tommy, in what I've seen, and the improvements since I last played Skyrim for certain, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get it for free, so there's no reason why not to play it. But I'm actually very much looking forward to it. And of course, the big attraction, and something that we're seeing pretty much now as a default, is that it's going to be cross-play and cross-progression.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why any game that's developed today that is already multi-platform, and I feel like developers are lazy if they don't implement that now moving forwards, because there's no reason not to do it. No. It's being done across the other platforms, so why stop and limit it to a new platform not having it? I understand that there are going to be varying amounts of work to be done for different platforms, but if you're going to release it to a platform, you may as well just do that now, because you're just locking off a portion of player base. And while Stadia clearly at the moment is a minority in terms of players against the rest of the platforms, this is, my vision of this at least, is that in a couple of years' time, that is going to be sort of flip reversed, if you like. I think we will see maybe not just Stadia, but the cloud elements will massively outweigh the local hardware players.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think not only, obviously, is it in Google's interest to ensure that these titles have crossplay whilst it's building up its user base, but now that we're sort of seeing a breakdown in the old guard of console dominance, I think it's also something that's of real commercial significance for the developers themselves. So it makes sense, and I think this is really giving them an opportunity to essentially exercise that ability. And of course, with something like an online title like this, or as you mentioned, Destiny, Division, there's a number of them where having that ability to play with an existing client user base will significantly, will really improve the enjoyment of the title, I think. Otherwise, we just get the whole, you're running around and there's nothing to do type of thing, nobody to play with, which is no good to anybody, really, sadly, is it?
No, and I think that this is Stadia's number one fault, is the player base. There are so many games on the service now that have a multiplayer element that is just so significantly impacted by the fact that there aren't enough people playing on Stadia.
Yeah.
I mean, my go-to game still at the moment is NBA 2K20, and whilst the sale initially massively boosted numbers by, I mean, I'd go as far as saying like 4 times the amount of players I was seeing online in the they call it the neighborhood, the online element of your created character.
Yeah,
that has started to dwindle down again, and I guess that will just be the number of people that were playing it because they just bought the game for £2.50, and then, or in UK and EU, I should say, naturally you're going to see those numbers kind of tail off because everyone's going to play it while it's so cheap.
Yeah.
But the people that will play that game long term are going to be a very different kind of guise of people. But PUBG is another one. I really enjoy playing PUBG again. I played that on PC when it launched, loved it. I was terrible at it then. And what I don't enjoy about this version now that I've been playing it for a while is the bots. So I wasn't fully aware of this at first. And I started getting these chicken dinners and I was like, something's changed. And it can't just be that I'm playing it on a controller. My level of play is not superior to playing on a mouse and keyboard, but obviously you're playing against other people also on controllers. But then when you're like hunting somebody down and all of a sudden they just stop completely still for no reason at all, you start shooting them, they don't do anything. I was like, why is this happening a lot? I've done a little bit of research, found out they're populating with bots. Now, if you play the game with controller only, that doesn't happen as much. So, and my reason, I'm guessing, for that is you then get put with either people on PlayStation or Xbox. So you're naturally going to get that higher player base. But if you play it with a mouse and keyboard, that is only on Stadia. So you lose the cross-platform when you do that. And I don't see why that's a thing. And yes, I actually lost 2 saves on NBA.
Oh no.
One was a career that I put probably 30 odd hours into. The second one, I actually created a character, came offline as soon as I'd finished it, went back to it later on that day and it wasn't there. So the second one was not really an issue. It took 5 minutes to resolve. The first one was enough to stop me playing the game for a solid month.
Ouch. Wow. And you still came back? You still went back?
Still went back because it's the only way I can get an NBA game. And although I'm not a massive fan of the actual sport, I mean, I like it. I used to be really into it, but these days, again, sports, especially that play in American time zones, generally, I don't have enough time for that. But it scratches the itch to be able to play the game.
Yes.
But yeah, that's just an annoyance.
That's not good. And of course, it leads us on to the reason I've got the screen up, which was one of the other announcements, was the release of ranked play for PUBG, update 7.2. Do you think, Tommy, that that's going to improve? Because of course, one of the aspects of the update is that there will be no bots.
Yeah.
And the amount of players are reduced down from 100 to, I think it's 64.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting choice of number. Or maybe they're Beatles fans. Who knows? But I was thinking that one of the advantages for a player like me, and let's be completely honest here, if anybody saw me playing on Rockstars at night last Friday, I admit, hands up, I'm not great in PvP. So one of the things that I always liked playing Crucible in Destiny was where you were playing against people of a similar rank to yourself.
Yeah.
And it meant that it did give you a longer game because you weren't dying all the time, and it gave you an opportunity to actually get some decent scores and build up your skill base. Do you think that that's what will happen here, or do you think it's going to be a kill fest?
I'm not 100% sure because this wasn't a feature when I played it on PC. They didn't implement ranked until after I'd stopped. And you would think that that was going to be the case because it's kind of padding other people's records if you're ranked within the top 10% and you're playing with complete range of people that have never played the game before to people that were within your rank. So I would imagine that over time, yes, you are going to find that you either need a set number of games to achieve a rank. I don't know how this is going to work, but usually you play a set number of games that determines a predispositioned amount of players that you're going to play against, and then you either go up or down depending on what you do. But if they are going to start it that everybody is like in an all-out to start with, then you're almost better not playing the game for a while and waiting for people's ranks to settle and then going in at the lower end and not having to worry about potentially fighting some of the better players.
Okay.
But I'll try it out tonight, actually. I'll see what happens because getting rid of the bots, I think, will be a massive, massive difference in how the game plays. My biggest gripe, actually, with the game at the moment is how poorly optimized it is for Chrome. If I played it on my Chromecast Ultra, and it was superb, like visually much, much better looking. I get a lot of pixelation when I play PUBG in Chrome, like a god-awful amount, to the point that it kind of breaks the game because you can't see what's going on around you properly. And this is a game where 2 seconds make a massive difference.
Yeah.
If somebody starts shooting at you and you don't have somewhere to hide and get yourself together, you're generally going to be out of that round pretty quickly. It's a very fast-paced game. Comebacks aren't a massive thing in this game, but yeah, you can play it on Chromecast Ultra. It's much, much better. I hope that, again, I know this is something that we're going to touch on later, but with the advent of bringing support for 1440p in Chrome, maybe that's going to kind of fix that issue. I've yet to try it, but I hope that does become a thing.
No, I think so, and I think the other features of the update, which are better loot, so more of an incentive to play. The fact that they've ditched the red zone as well, so you don't get bombarded with napalm, which is always a bit of a downer when you're like me and you completely forget that you're supposed to keep moving.
Yeah.
So I can see some advantages. I'm the same boat. I'm quite keen to try it with the rank. With the rank position, I think I've only had 3 kills in my entire PUBG history, and 2 of those were bots. So it would be quite nice to actually chalk up a real person in a nice way. So something to look forward to there. Right, so let's. I'll just bring myself back in. There we go, and we'll have a look at the next announcement that came yesterday. So we heard that as well as obviously the 2 new games, Jotun and Sundered, were released. They've also announced that this when's June the 1st? When's June the 1st, actually, Tommy? It's not, is it?
4 days, 27th today.
27th plus 4.
Sorry, it's 31. Yes,
Sunday?
It is Monday. Sorry, Monday.
Monday, right? Okay.
I keep forgetting we've got 31 days.
Yeah. Well, okay, okay. So we've established that my maths ain't great. I've never pretended otherwise. So what I wanted to do was choose that one and make that our spotlight. So we've been told that Little Nightmares is going to be the big pro deal game coming on Monday. Now this, as it says here, sold 2 million copies. I know it's been a very successful game, and when it was first released, I think a couple of years ago on PlayStation, I must admit to thinking that looks gorgeous, and kind of in the Big Little Planet type quality of graphic, that sort of third person, almost very sort of 3D, almost lots of good physics and stuff. So I was quite keen to get it. Never did, but I'm really excited to see that it's coming on Monday. Have you played it at all?
I have, yeah. It's actually a really good, fun game. I really enjoyed this game, and I'm glad that we're seeing a couple more of the darker sensed games coming to the platform.
Yep.
One thing I think that we are missing is horror games. We have none of them previous to this coming. This isn't really a horror game, but at least gives some of those darker tones off. Guilt is the closest thing we have to a horror game on the platform so far.
Yeah.
And whilst that game did make me genuinely have a few moments where I'm glad that whilst I streamed the entire game, at points nobody was watching, and I'm glad of that, because that is very much seen as like a transitional game for people that don't play horror games to try one out and get into it. It's a softer class, but I miss playing them, and at the moment Stadia doesn't give me any way to get that fix. I'm terrible at them, but I think they would probably make for good content for me, because I just my other half would attest for this. I just can't play them very well. The last one, I think, Resident Evil, I was the last one that I tried to play, and I uninstalled it roughly 30 minutes into the game.
Yeah, that was quite a nasty game.
Couldn't do it.
No,
couldn't do it.
I tried it on VR, and that was I didn't sleep for nights.
I think I'd go through the window.
Yeah,
I'd do one of them weird videos where I'd smashed every screen in the house in front of me first. No, I'm just terrible at them, but I enjoy that fear that comes from them. Other than Outlast, those games are not for me. I cannot handle those. That's a different level.
Yeah, and there are some, certainly on Steam and on PC, there's some fairly graphic games available, aren't there? If that's your thing. Of course, you could argue, and there's some that do, that we do have the odd horror game, like Stacks on Stacks, for example, but that's a completely different termination for the term horror, and I couldn't possibly comment. I'll just get rid of that. Bring me back again. There we go. And bring myself back in. There we go. So that's coming out on Monday. Now, I'm wondering whether it'll come on its own, or in fact, there's still maybe a little surprise up.
1 second, sorry, I've just got to jump out very quickly.
Yeah, no worries, not a problem at all. I will take the spotlight. Hello, folks, it's me. Thanks ever so much for popping over and saying hi in the chat. It's great to see so many people. And as you've seen, I've now got that magic feature that allows me to pull you up on screen, which is great. So one to escape. It's really good to see so many of you. Young Duncan, he's always a great contributor in chat. But we've got so many people. I saw Project Storm. Project Storm, fun enough, I was talking the other night with Stadia Mania, and both of us were saying how really impressed we are with not just the gentleman himself, who is an incredibly intelligent and articulate streamer and individual, but also his content is amazing. So without trying to take Chase's steam away, go and check out Project Storm's content, because it really is very, very good. And he has a lot of very valuable thoughts to share as well. And we've got one of my other great favorites in the Stadia community, young Ray 3473, who doesn't believe in online privacy because that stands for his date of birth. I think what you should have done, Ray, is put your cat's name, your child's middle name, your parents' address, and then your date of birth, and maybe the PIN number at the end, just to make sure that they don't miss the point. Now then, we are joined by. We don't want to get rid of. There we go. We bring him back in, and how do I get myself back in there? Hang on. Well,
that part I can't help you with.
There we go. Blimey, I was going so well, Tommy.
It's my fault. I broke everything by leaving.
I was going so well. Are you okay? You're able to carry on?
Yeah, fine. Just had a Love Island emergency.
Oh no, I thought it was a call of nature. I know what it's like when you get to a certain age.
Wouldn't know yet.
No. I know you certainly wouldn't. Right, where did we get to when I've just been talking to the chat, so you're okay. So we got
headphones on, so I didn't miss anything audibly.
Oh, good. Excellent. That's good. So I know what we've got next. So we've done PUBG. We've done Little Nightmares. We were just going to touch on a thought that I had, which was, I know some people have been saying, well, we're only getting the one pro deal game or pro game. Or are we? And that was exactly my point, because as you rightly said earlier, yesterday was a kind of piecemeal drip feed of information? And could it be that there is more to come? Question.
I think.
Do you think, or do you know? This is what the chat are asking.
No, I think so. For me, I don't think Stadia can now ever get away with not giving us at least 2 games. And whilst that's possibly incredibly entitled to say, the fact that since they started giving away pro games, it's always been a minimum of 2. And we've seen a lot of the months where they've actually given us 3 titles as well. But we are getting to a point where essentially like most of the library has now been given away for free. And are they just going to start re-rotating other games into this, bringing them back in as pro deals? I can see the community getting upset with that. But then there will be people that haven't been on this journey from November when we got into it, and they will have missed that opportunity to grab a game as a pro game. So I think at some point that is going to happen. We are going to see some games re-rotate back into the pro deals. But I'm not sure I agree with what I just said then, because I just think the backlash on that of people going, well, I paid my $9.99 and you've offered me 2 games I've already got. Okay. But what if when they bring out pre-orders as an example, what if you pre-order games and then they turn around and say, actually, no, that's now going to be a pro game? It's tricky.
How does it work with PlayStation and Xbox, Tommy? If they do a similar thing, they have a couple of games, 3 games a month. If you miss them, I don't think you can pick them up if you join, can you? And I don't think they offer them to you in the future. No,
they don't. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think they've ever repeated games. But there's no way of getting them if you're not there in that month. Now with Stadia, I mean, they told us that no, you got to claim them within the month. And like generally speaking, they're there for 3 months to claim. It's on like a rolling contract almost, isn't it? Like you pay your $9.99, and providing that you're still a pro member in a couple of months' time, if you didn't claim it when it came out, it's still available to be claimed. And I mean, Thumper was on, even got extended. I think that was on for like 4 months. Now, no, that clearly meant that the numbers were not being hit for that game. So it was their way of making sure that the developer didn't suffer for that. But I think it's probably a lesson to Stadia as well, is that when you're giving pro games away, they have to be games that people are going to actually want to play. And unfortunately, Thumper is not a game that when that launched with Stadia, that wasn't the right game to even have in the library, I don't think. You don't need those kind of filler titles that people don't care about. And that's nothing against the devs. The game worked flawlessly. It was a good looking game, but as far as rhythm games go, they're a very small niche. So to launch that on a brand new platform and expect to get kind of sales is just not a good business move. I
think it was originally a VR title as well, wasn't it? And it was very well received in the whole kind of headset community, because it is very visually amazing. And the sounds at the same time. So if you're encased in the world of Thumper with the beats and the visuals, and that's all you're seeing, I can absolutely see how a trippy experience that could be. But making its way over as a big screen game, I'm not sure that it really transferred so well.
No, and there are other games I feel like that with Stadia as well. There are just certain games that I know they're going to want to give a great scope of what's available, appeal to as many people as possible. But one of the problems is that some of the games actually do the opposite thing. But if you're then trying to tout how many games you've got on your platform, and then you look at player numbers, how many people are playing those games on your platform, you're actually giving yourself a harder time than you need to be giving yourself. If you could, I get that they're not going to be able to acquire the Call of Duties and so on early on. I don't think we're going to see Call of Duty this year, and possibly not even next year, because clearly there is a new Call of Duty in development right now. We're certainly not going to see the current Modern Warfare come. That's not going to happen. It's too far into development. The next one, I feel like that might be too much of an ask, but I would certainly say that if we're not getting games of that caliber the following year, there's an issue with what the platform is hoping to obtain, at least in the way that we've been told what Stadia is going to be. I mean, they could quite easily turn around and say, look, you know what, we are never going to go for that type of game. That would put an awful lot of people off the platform instantly. But at least if it got to that point and it never happened, they told everyone, so they would know what they were gonna get. I mean, they clearly want the casual player base. That's something they are very interested in grabbing. We're seeing way more indie titles on board than we are AAAs. But that first party title, when we find out what that is going to be, I think that's the time period where Stadia can really show what it's about.
I 100% agree, and I also agree completely that they're aiming at the casual audience. So I think that's their number one goal overall. One of the other big announcements, of course, yesterday was Aftermath, which is a new update, an expansion pack from Mortal Kombat. Brings Shiva and our good old friend RoboCop. And Fujin. Now, I don't know any of those characters apart from RoboCop, so I'm assuming Shiva looks like the Asian person lady on the left, and therefore Fujin is the kind of Japanese-looking guy on the right. That's a pretty good guess on basis of Sherlock Holmesian logic. But are you a Mortal Kombat fan, Tommy? Is that the kind of game that you could stream?
So I wouldn't say that I'm not a fan, but I also haven't. Well, I did purchase Mortal Kombat 11, but I refunded it. And that's not because the game wasn't good. It's just, for me, I haven't played a Mortal Kombat game since, I think it was Mortal Kombat 9. I could be wrong in which number it was. But they don't do enough for me. So, I mean, everybody knows what Mortal Kombat is. Even if you've never played it, you know what it is. And there's very little that you can do to really change what each game is. Sure. They're just better visuals and different features and friendship instead of fatalities and so on. But it just wasn't enough for me. I wasn't going to play the game enough. So I decided to refund it. I got to play it for roughly an hour and a half, and it worked perfectly well. I just don't have the time. Again, these games require a lot of time. You need to learn all the combos of all of the different characters so that you can effectively play it. And Street Fighter 4 is the last game, or maybe 5, that I really got into and played quite a lot on the Xbox. But again, if you want to play that at a competitive level, that's a different ball game altogether. And I do not have the amount of time to dedicate to a game like that. So it's just wasted on me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Again, I mentioned it earlier, the thing for me is, those big kind of cinematic experiences with, really well-written story, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, really lovely CGI and pushing the boundaries graphically. Now, this does tick a lot of those boxes in the sense that I know that it started as a mere sort of, punch 'em up, and they've added a story to it. And graphically, it's absolutely astounding. It's a beautiful piece of work, but ultimately, it's still very much a kind of key masher, isn't it? A button masher.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if that's your thing, then that's amazing, and it absolutely is for a huge amount of people. And of course, it's like everything, isn't it? You want a variety in your diet. So if this does appeal to you and you've got the cash, then having it in your library is a sensible thing. So not for me, not for you, but certainly it has its place. And this looks like a really good expansion pack in any case. So one for the user base, so that's cool. This obviously is the store, so it's been updated yesterday. One of the other stories, Tommy, that I wanted to cover was the fact that not so much that Ember has come, because that's now a little bit of old news. And I know that you guys on Stadia Source have reviewed it, and Duncan's done some streaming of it and so on. One of the thoughts that I'd had, which I just wanted to touch base with you on, though, was the new concept of early access. My understanding of that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is this isn't so much early access to a completed game. It's early access to a game that's near completion, that it's still got some wrinkles that need ironing out. Maybe it's a late stage beta, sort of pre-gold release. Is that correct?
If Duncan was here right now, which I don't know if he is, he would have some comments specifically targeted at me for this game. And
I'm sure he will.
there you go. That's Tommy's favorite game. This game, I've played a lot of early access, pre-releases, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
Unfortunately for me, I've never played one that was as broken as this.
Right.
And it's tainted my view on the game. And I actually had to take some time to go and really think about that, because I was, in some aspects, I think I'm unfair to the game in how I feel about it, because it is an early access game. You should never expect these to be flawless. They're not finished games. But at the same time, I haven't actually gone back and played it. Now, it is on my list of things to go and do again, because I think I owe it to the game more than anything. I've never gone and played a game that I've had so many technical problems with and then not gone back to see how it is once these things are addressed and fixed. I think it's not fair to give an opinion on something if you're not at least going to try it in a state where developers have spent time and tried to fix those problems. But again, this is a game where I experienced lost saves, and out of the 3 people I was playing it with, 2 of us experienced lost saves at the same time.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And that's my fear, Tommy, to be fair, because I understand and appreciate that, it's early access, and as long as they state that it's not in a finished state. But 2 things. One is they're charging for it.
Yes.
And arguably, if I'm paying for something, I want it to be, as near as damn it perfect
at least
product.
A stable game.
Absolutely. And then the second thing which concerns me is how that's going to tarnish Stadia and also the game itself. You've just very rightly said you played it. It didn't work. You will go back to it at some point, but how many people will go, no, I've got, it's kind of Pavlovian. I've got really bad memories of that game. I didn't enjoy it. It left me feeling negative. I'm done with it. Whereas if they'd waited another month and brought it out in its finished state, even if it was a couple of pounds more, maybe it would have been a different story. And I guess that's my fear about the whole early access concept.
So yeah, I kind of agree actually. And weirdly, also on that the price that it is at for early access, I feel like is kind of steep, and it makes me think that when the finished game is out, that this may be priced higher than some of the other games of this kind of caliber. Actually, random news.
It actually says $17.99. So it's 30. Sorry, it's underneath the.
Right, sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't bother. That's how much I didn't care for this game, if I'm honest.
But Random Noob makes a good point in that if it had been added to our pro games as a pro early access at no cost, and then in a month's time it's released at a higher price into the main store, and you can either pay for the updated version or it's available to everybody, you probably wouldn't feel so negative towards it, would you, at that state?
No, absolutely not. And that, I think, is probably, especially for the very first early access game on the platform, would have probably been a much better idea. I mean, we actually got it as a pre-early access game as well. So it very well may have already fixed some of the issues. But the fact that I was seeing people like cutting and copy and pasting parts of the the disclaimer, if you like, that there are issues where you may lose saves. To me, if you're going to release a game in early access and that is a potential issue, delay that release. Wait until you fix that particular bug. That's going to be the biggest problem anybody has in playing a game, that if their progress is lost, they are not going to want to redo it.
No, it does concern me. I absolutely love the concept. Having particularly in a library that needs a bit of padding out, I can see why you might want to take some of the nearly completed games and bring them to the store. But I think, as you and I both said, and it's being, I think, echoed in the chat as well, paying even 10% or 15% less than the finished price for something that really isn't finished, that for me is asking for trouble, and I don't know that it's going to be a good look. You've already had, I didn't realize from what you've just said just how many issues there were. I know I would be absolutely livid if I just spent the last hour completing a level and found that it hadn't saved. I would just I mean, that would be, if it was possible, it would be deleted.
Yeah, and you know what? An hour is frustrating, and this game, I don't know what the top limit is in its current state of how many hours people are really going to put into it. But I've played early access games before where I've probably put in, I don't know, close to 100 hours before they've actually, well, to be fair, I've put in more than that in some, if you count things like DayZ, which are technically still in beta, like 8 years in or whatever. But if you'd played this game for close to 100 hours, which I don't think this game you would, but theoretically, and then you lost all of that progress. Bear in mind there are customization options that you can buy with currency in-game, not real-world currency, what you get through playing the game. You customize what your character looks like, and then the next time you go to play the game, it's gone, and you're back to default. Not only are you back to default, you then have to walk through the tutorial again, get back to a point where you can start playing the game, and you have to start everything over again. That would be enough for me, regardless of the game, to pretty much just turn around and go, yep, that was fun, next.
Yes, that makes sense. I'm sorry, I've lost it. Where's it gone? Disappeared. There we are. Jack says, it's a fairly good point. Well, it's a very good point. Early access is important for developers. It's sad that the community is turning it into a negative. We should be applauding Stadia for having the option. Text got clipped on the end of the caption there. So, he makes the point that it gives the developers an opportunity to release it into the wild, get some feedback. I suppose it's a way of circumventing testing. Does that change your thoughts in any way, Tommi?
No, and for me, I completely agree with the actual statement that he said. Early access is a big thing. That's why I've always been a supporter of playing early access games. My only gripe is that early access games should have at least been play tested enough that serious big issues with games, and I'm not just talking about occasional save losses, that's not a problem. We actually reached out to them when this happened, both myself and Duncan got a response. I never got anything, and that was that, on the home screen, if you press the X button, it will delete your save without asking if you want to do that.
Right.
That's lazy. Yeah. That should not be a thing. You should at least give you a prompt of, are you sure you want to do this? So come back and say that. Now, that wasn't what happened, because we actually lost the save from the game crashing for all three of us that were playing it. Ash actually got booted out of the game. We didn't know that. No, nothing had come up. Me and Duncan were able to still continue playing the game, although the timer had stopped. You couldn't actually do anything, so all we could do is run around the level. We didn't even know that Ash wasn't in the game any longer until he told us. And we're like, right, okay, we can't even exit the game. The game has a feature built into it, which all early access games should have, is that you can report a bug from within the game. That's great. You click on that, brings up a text box, brings up the on-screen keyboard. Can't input any data.
Oh dear.
So you can't even, the fact that you can't report the bug because that system has a bug in it, that doesn't mean it works as well. There are different levels of supporting development, and if you're going to give people that and ask them to pay for it, I don't think you're being fair enough to the audience. That if the 2 hours refund policy exists within that environment as well,
yes,
don't buy the game.
Yes.
If you're going to say you can have 10 hours,
yes,
and then refund because it's early access, because the developer are very well aware that there are some stability issues, then yeah, okay, that's a bit better. But not on 2 hours. That's not a fair enough time frame.
I think you make some really valid points, and I think the key thing here from me is that it's quid pro quo. In essence, they're getting an inordinate amount of very free user testing, which is not cheap if you were to do it on a commercial basis.
Yeah, absolutely is.
And they're also getting some cash up front as well. My feeling is that there should be a formality that allows you to apply to have access, to get access to early access games, probably with a very low barrier to entry. Maybe it's for free, or maybe there's a small charge, but at least you know that you've applied and that's what you're getting. And if you do apply to be a beta tester, you know you're going to come across issues. My concern is that it sits in the store amongst other games. Not everybody's going to scroll down the page and see the disclaimer, which also frighteningly says that if the developer suddenly decides not to publish the game, your quid's out.
Yeah.
They see the pretty graphics, they see the price is reduced. They don't really understand what, I know most of us do, but there are those that don't. They're not, particularly youngsters, not sure what early access means, but anyway, maybe that's the name of the game, Ember Early Access. So we pay for it. I mean, there's no reason to assume not. It's put there right in the title of the name of the game. It's not as if it's down here saying Ember, and then this is an early access game. Please note disclaimer below.
That again is, I think, it's just a Stadia thing, and nothing is polished yet. You're absolutely right. The name actually there, as it stands, is Ember Early Access,
yes.
And just all they needed is a hyphen. That was solved that issue,
or a couple of parentheses, a couple of brackets.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant, and don't get me wrong. I think we all agree it's great to see the facility, but again, I think, as you've just said, to be fair, Tommy, so much of what happens in and around Stadia currently is sort of 80% thought through, and really with a little bit more thought, that could be a very useful feature, and one that would benefit both the users and, of course, the store and the developer. So, great. Thank you for those.
Larian, I think will show you how you do an early access game. When people are getting access to Baldur's Gate 3, that is going to be a very different experience, I'm sure.
And that, of course, is, we're hoping, towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Which will be in a similar vein to Elder Scrolls as well. It's actually one of those positional games, isn't it? You set where you want to go.
Yeah.
You get sort of turn-based game, isn't it?
Turn-based, yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. I'm very much conscious of the time. Are you okay, Tommy, or have you got to?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, mate, no worries. I'll just bring me back into the fray. Hi, folks. I knew you were missing me.
Oh, wrong side.
Yeah, I want my camera down there as well, but it won't let me do that. So we've just got a couple of things left anyway. One of the big things which I actually tested earlier and was very impressed with is the ability now on Chrome to run at a 1440p. Obviously, if you've got a suitable monitor, a lot of laptops aren't quite 4K, but they are higher res than 1080p, and this suits us and that sort of thing quite well. Have you had a chance at all to try games on 1440?
No, I haven't yet, and it's something that I want to. I seen the news yesterday, and I didn't actually get on Stadia at all yesterday. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Not just for that PUBG trial, as I said earlier, but I don't really understand why it wasn't a thing anyway. Because if you can push out up to 4K, then everything in between is already achievable. But it'd be nice to see what the difference is, because currently I've been playing on highest best visual setting rather than balanced again, because I've noticed that my internet seems to be getting a bit steadier all the time again. So I thought, let's try it. I was playing Assassin's Creed on the TV in 4K, and I thought, right, let's go over, let's just see what happens. I also have Stadia Plus for Chrome, so I actually force 4K anyway, even though the monitor isn't capable of doing it. I found that you do get a slightly sharper graphic anyway, but you do still get the same bandwidth. Even though you're not displaying it in 4K, you're receiving the 4K signal essentially. So it is something to be wary of for certain people. If your internet isn't up to it and you do that method, you get a worse experience. But
no, very true.
It'd be interesting. I haven't checked if that allows me to pre-select 1440p as a forced resolution. If it does, that's going to be a game changer for me.
That's a good question, and I only quickly flicked up Doom 64 earlier this afternoon, and I don't recall it giving me an option, but it may have been in the app, and I haven't checked. To be fair, I doubt it was. Typically, I think if you're choosing the highest choice, obviously in the data, in the graphics section of the app, then it's probably going to give you the best output for your screen.
Yeah,
but it was very good. It was very impressive. It's certainly better than 1080p, and silky smooth. And interestingly, and I'm not sure whether this is just a placebo, but I know a few people have been saying that just recently everything feels like it's gone up a notch in quality. Have you felt similar?
Yeah, I have, and I don't know whether or not it's. I mean, certainly for us over here, with the way that the whole lockdown thing has changed, people have started going back to their jobs now, and whether or not that's impacting the fact that we're having less usage and so on again, as we have been now for the last however long it's been. It's mental. Because I remember when the lockdown hit, all of a sudden everything changed. Like even loading a YouTube video after a couple of weeks, everything was lowered down to. I'm fairly confident that most of my videos were being defaulted to 480, not even 720.
Nice.
And I know, obviously, we started seeing Netflix follow suit. In fact, I think they went first before YouTube. But I certainly noticed a big difference in Stadia's ability to play through Chrome, which wasn't impacted in the same way on the Chromecast. But lately, yeah, it's felt better again. I loaded up Borderlands the other day because historically it's a game I can only play on Chromecast. It's too choppy on Chrome, and it actually ran fine on Chrome. So
Well, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts when you test it out at 1440, which of course is significantly higher quality. Sadly, I did return Borderlands 3, but that was more to do with the fact that I already have it on PlayStation. And the only reason that I wanted to test it on Stadia was to see if there was any massive difference in graphic fidelity, and I didn't feel a huge enough reason to invest the extra dosh in it. But it's a great game. It looks amazing.
To be completely honest with you, I didn't purchase it. It was a copy that we were given through Stadia Source. I have it on PC. I bought it through Epic. I couldn't wait for it to be launched anywhere else, and I didn't have a console at the time. So for me, in fact, I still don't. It's PC or Stadia. That's it.
Right.
Or cloud, I should say. But
yes,
I haven't played it enough.
Being dangerous.
Yeah, I haven't played it enough on Stadia, and that's purely been down to stability issues. Grinding through the whole game to get to the end content is something I very much am still working towards.
It's a big game.
It is. It takes a while, and whilst you can kind of power level people through it, if you've got people that have already done it, I don't have that player base again on Stadia that I have when I go to play it on another platform. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And then I think just about the last story that we've got lined up here, Tommi, is this one, which I'm deferring to your very good friends at Stadia Source. Here I am logged in, which you should all do, by the way. If you're not aware of you're all aware of Stadia Source, but if you're not aware of the facility to actually register and log in, there's some amazing features, not least of which the fact that you can pair up with people to play games, you can add your library of games in there. It's just really, really good. So anyway, this story is that in essence, Stadia has confirmed that it will have a presence at IGN's Summer of Gaming, which starts on the 4th of June. And the thing that I wanted to discuss with you, Tommi, was given that that's essentially written off the whole of June, and I don't know, to be fair, how much of that Stadia will want to have presence within. What does that do you think, in terms of when we're likely to see the next Connect?
Yeah, so I really thought Connect was going to be a June thing. In fact, did they tell us it was going to be around then, or am I just?
I thought they did, and then when I was on a show with Eddie and Chase the other day, and Eddie pointed out rightly that they said coming this summer. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess they still could, because this is, for want of a better way of looking at it, this is E3 hosted by IGN.
Yes.
But clearly Stadia are doing something a little bit different. They're going for a bit more of that Nintendo feel, where they like to have their own showcase as well. And I'm completely fine with that. And it's something that I think more platforms should do. It's great to have these big events where all of these platforms come together, because it helps generate the buzz for people that previously had no interest in Stadia. It's just, if it comes after this, then it's kind of saturated already, right? Because they can't go the first week of July if this is towards the end of June.
Exactly.
And then that means you're going towards the end of July, maybe even early August, at which point the hype from the last Connect to this Connect is very much fizzled out. And depending on what we find out on the new consoles, etc., or new games that are coming from this event, that could already be enough to set people in the way of what they want to do moving forwards, to the point where they then still don't bother to watch the Connect or find out about that because it's too late. They've seen everything they wanted to see. They've made their mind up. What are Stadia going to do to come in and shake that up for people? I think there's a danger at the moment that we already haven't hit some of the metrics that I think a lot of people thought we were going to hit. And again, it's coming back to multiplayer games for me. Really the only issue that I have with Stadia, I can deal with everything else. The fact that we're still not seeing logos on trailers, release dates are not being given ahead of time. I can deal with all of those things. What I can't deal with is I go to play a game that I've purchased. It has an online feature, but I can't really use it because there aren't enough people to play it with.
Yeah.
Zombie Army 4, perfect example, great game, really enjoying that. Obviously, it was a pro game, so I haven't paid for it. And I know I'm not alone. I've seen a few people actually tweet about this after Duncan mentioned it. The Reddit post that he found, people are going and purchasing this game after playing it on Stadia on a different platform just because they want to play it on multiplayer and they enjoyed the other side of it so much on Stadia.
Wow.
That's devastating for any platform.
Yeah, no, that's painful. That is painful. So I'm just quickly flicking through the menu of or the itinerary. I can't. There's a huge amount of unnamed, and rightly so, because the games industry loves to surprise and keep things up its sleeve till the end. It's a hype train at the end of the day. So it's difficult to know exactly when Stadia is going to make its appearance. But no, it does. I'm totally with you. I felt that the runes were there for June. I think partly because we knew that the 2-month trial period ended in June. And interestingly, of course, it ends on June the 3rd, which is the day before the IGN Festival of Gaming. So that would probably explain the reason for that, although I'm not quite sure the symbolism. And potentially the 3rd of June, therefore, could still be the Connect just ahead of the IGN thing or the E3 thing.
Yeah, I really hope that it comes in June still. Early June would be better, even up to sort of mid-June. I think after middle of June time, I think they're getting dangerous about it just getting lost in other things.
Yes.
I know Brian from Club Stadia had previously called out, I believe he was going for the 9th of June. That would be a perfect time for me. I know that there's already this going on, but again, it's early enough that the people that are currently not necessarily just all in on Stadia, but in on Stadia to whatever degree, it's going to help keep some energy going. And that's what they really need to keep going, because obviously we know a lot of content creators that are Stadia based, and they're all doing a fantastic job at keeping the energy levels up. They're giving everything all the time. If we didn't have that community, I can't help feel that I may have already left Stadia behind. Not to say that I wouldn't use it, because certainly I've uninstalled everything bar one game on my PC, and that is purely down to I cannot deal with the constant patches, updates, installs, all of that good stuff.
Yes.
But at the same time, Epic had such a great deal that I've really, really wanted to play Detroit Become Human for such a long time without going and buying a PlayStation to play it. I had no option. Just got it. Game runs great, but I can't stream it, which I wanted to do. But it's impossible for me to play a game that graphically intense and stream at the same time. It's not happening. And I'm still waiting for my Shadow to be reconnected, because I'm in that lovely queue at the moment.
Yes. So you're looking at June or later?
August.
August. Yes. No, I'm
Yeah,
quite
they've got
keen myself, actually. That's something I'm quite keen at looking at as well. I think, of course, there is the one option that we've not considered, and that is that they marry the two together so that at some point in the sort of 4th to the 24th, they have both their event at the Summer of Gaming that is also a Connect. That's, I suppose, technically possible.
Yeah, well, I can't see any reason why not. I mean, I don't see how IGN are going to be affected by that. I mean, Xbox, PlayStation Nintendo could all do their own thing under the guise of IGN's Summer of Gaming or whatever it is. That would actually be quite a good idea, I think, just to say that they can do their own bits and pieces, but they're going to hold their Connect as part of this big festival.
Yes.
I actually think that's a really good idea.
Well, who knows? That may certainly be how it pans out. But I'm really looking forward to that, the 4th of June. And maybe this becomes the new E3, the permanent E3 moving forward, because I think certainly from users' perspective, we all watch it streamed anyway. So if it's actually optimized for people viewing it in that format, it literally is the perfect summer of gaming for us, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't watch very much in terms of media that isn't on demand anymore. So again, this for me would work out better. Obviously, E3 runs on US timetables. So for us folks over here, it's not very easy to watch everything. It's wrong time of day, especially for anybody that's got kids. You generally don't get to any time to yourself until the evening, of which time you're going back and watching what's already happened, having to stay away from Twitter or Facebook or whatever if you don't want to see any spoilers and that. So yeah, on-demand things for me are just much, much easier. Streams, you can, even if you just load the stream up and press pause, you can go to it and watch it straight away or whatever, or even timestamp it, make it really easy for people. But yeah, I prefer it that way. I'm sad to see if this is the end of E3. I'm sad to see it go because it's been such a pivotal thing in the gaming community for such a long time now. But arguably, it's been getting smaller and smaller. I mean, Sony didn't even attend it. So, yeah, I think it needs a shake-up. Yeah.
No, I agree. It has kind of been moving that way. And like all things, I think coming the other side of where we all are right now, the world is going to be that little bit different, isn't it? Something to get used to. And on that very happy note, Tommi, we can all look forward to the future with optimism. I tell
you what, I can give a little bit of optimism to bring that up, and that is the Avengers game is giving us some more information on the 24th of June, which I'm actually looking forward to quite a lot now, because I have to say Bill over at StadiaCast swayed me on this game. I was looking at it.
Took you down the pub, did he?
I wish. I haven't been to one for so long now that I can literally see one out my window there as well.
No.
It's heartbreaking.
That's cruelty.
It is. But I was looking at it from the point of, I like the Marvel films, I like the universe. And then when I seen that at first, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's the shambles. Nobody looks anything like any of the Avengers.
Yeah.
It's like terrible voiceover. I was like, no, that's a failure. But I was doing the wrong thing. I was just taking what the current look of the Avengers are in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and applying that to a game. And that's not what this is about. This is somebody else's vision of what the Avengers are. Yes, they still have modeled them off of the current actors and so on. But I think that's kind of it's probably very difficult to get the rights to make a Marvel game where you're not at least pretending that it's based off of the films.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to treat this as its own entity. You know who the characters are, the superheroes are, and it's going to be a fun game. It's not a Marvel simulator. It's just going to be, here you go, get to play as your favorite superhero and do some crazy stuff. So I'm actually really looking forward to it. I guess
as well, and I don't know this is purely speculation, but the actors' faces obviously carry a fee. So if you were to try and model the actors their agents would be down on you like a ton of bricks, wouldn't they?
And I would imagine it for the cast that exists within the Marvel universe probably costs 10 times more than what the entire budget costs.
Yeah, it's understandable.
What the films have grossed in all the years.
Yeah, if you've just got one character, and I forget the name of the gentleman that's in Death Stranding and The Walking Dead, and obviously he was paid an immense amount of money to be the lead character in Death Stranding.
Death Stranding, yeah.
But if you've got half a dozen or more, thank you. But if you've got half a dozen or more, that's as you rightly said, more than the cost of developing the game has gone into paying for the rights to use their phys-ogs.
Yeah, and then you got to pay the Marvel licensing fees, and then all of the artists that own the various characters. It's an awful lot of money to stump up, and I mean, I know that. I know there'll be parts of the game that I feel could have been better. I'm not saying that it's going to be a perfect game, but I'm just really looking forward to getting a game with these characters in it and actually being able to interact differently and playing out some kind of scenes that are probably going to be very similar to some of the stories in the films, I would imagine. But
of course,
I'm looking forward to it.
So June the 24th, they will be making an announcement on the release date.
The release date we know.
Okay.
September the 8th.
Right.
That could be completely wrong.
Okay.
So the tweet that they put out was, "We've reassembled at home and are working to finish our mission.
Avengers assembled."
Yeah, exactly. We can't wait to show you a new gameplay and co-op in our first Marvel Avengers War Table stream on June the 24th. #reassemble.
Right.
But that's going to be part of the IGN Summer Game Fest, so it kind of falls into that. September 4th, is the release date, not 8th.
But lots of stuff coming up in September anyway, and that I know that's been one of the games that has been flagged as a Stadia game for some time, hasn't it? So
yes,
that's one I definitely would be interested in as well. Being an old fella, I remember the original comics, mate.
Yeah. Funnily enough, for my best friend's wedding, I was one of the ushers. Actually, a wedding present was a couple of really old, quite favorable. One of them actually is quite expensive. Original prints. Okay. So I don't even know where they are. That's the horrendous thing.
No, don't.
Safe. They are safe. I just don't know where.
my mum, bless her, threw it. I had a whole massive box of original 2000 ADs. All sorts of some really top-notch 70s comics, and of course left them all in the loft when I left home. Went back a few years later to pick them up, and I threw them out. I thought it was old tat.
I tell you what, I had a similar conversation not long ago with my mum, and this was Pokemon cards, so slightly different. Yeah. But I had, other than like Mew and Mewtwo and some of the types of shinies and so on, the original Pokemon cards. I had every single one of them, and they were in folders, like polythene folders inside of hard folders, so they were kept in perfect condition. They got thrown out.
No.
And the only reason the conversation came up was, this was going back a few years. Yeah. Some guy was making like literally hundreds of thousands selling these first edition cards on eBay, and I was like, that was my ticket. That was me never having to work.
That was the lottery for you. Oh my God, mate.
Yeah, I was
truth.
Yeah, it's just
at least you can feel rested that somebody made a lot of money off your back.
You know what?
Probably an old dustman somewhere in North Devon.
This was in Spain.
Okay.
Never made it back from Spain. I never knew.
No.
But yeah, so I doubt it. I reckon they just all got binned, probably. Just like, what's this?
Don't go there, Tommy. Don't even think about it, mate. I'm sure you made some very poor Spaniard very, very wealthy. And that's how you've got to think about these things.
It is. It's crazy though, isn't it? These things, like my old man used to tell me all the time with the cars that he's had. Like he had a Ford Mexico. He was like, yeah, it was in perfect condition. I just got rid of it because didn't need it anymore. And it's one of those things that you just like, now you look at them and they're like in a rusted shell that has nothing else in it. They sell for like 80, 90 grand. And you're just like,
OMG.
Yeah.
But how can you tell? How can you tell?
You don't know, do you?
No.
Time machine. That's the only way you can do it. You'd invite you to come and say hello.
And judging by the flashing lights in your room there, I think they've opened the pub up again. Get your shandy in.
I've run out. Drinking out of a can at the moment.
Oh no, an old bean can.
It's a Sailor Jerry's one.
Oh, that's fair enough. Yeah. Tommy, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for all your time on this first new look Rokk Around the Clock.
It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how you develop your channel. I stopped by the other day and watched you doing some NBA 2K, which was good because we all bought it for £2.50 and I haven't got a clue what I'm doing with it. So I needed to watch somebody who knew what they're doing.
It's a difficult game to get into, and anybody that has it and has touched it for however, like 10 minutes and be like, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. It's a game that there are different ways to play the game. So you have like a management section of the game. You have a My Player where you create your own player, join the NBA and go to whatever team you want and play that way. And then you have like for people that play FIFA and so on, the card version of the game where you get cards to play the game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There are multiple ways to play the game, but if you find one that you like, it's a worthwhile game, and don't be put off by the people that have lost the saves, because as heartbreaking as it is, it's few and far between. And anybody that's played 2K games for a long time knows that 2K have these problems from time to time. They're not the most stable, polished games, especially when they're ports.
Can I ask a favor, though? Can I ask, please, that you do, for us kind of complete noobs, a sort of a beginner's guide to NBA? Because I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, it'll be probably one of the first videos to do. Once the graphics come through, I'll put together something. It'll probably only be about half hour or so, because I think the best way to learn anything in that game is to just jump in and try the different modes. Yeah. Most people are going to know if they want to play a management kind of one, the card aspect, or just to create their own player. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll get a little guide together.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. Tommy, once again, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I know your compatriots at Stadia Source are kicking me, because I think they go live around now, don't they, with their show?
Oh, it's only Duncan. Don't worry about him.
Fair enough then. If I'd have known that, I wouldn't have rushed you. Listen, very quick. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Chat. Thank you for your amazing comments. You've been absolutely brilliant tonight. Hi, Lavelle, who's just joined us from the States. Good to see you, mate, as always. Ray, thank you so much for sticking with us, mate. I know it's some probably stupid o'clock where you are. I do love Ray's stuff. He's an absolute diamond of a fella.
Great
He's
guy.
A really lovely guy. Brandon, thank you as always, mate, for being my little moderator. And he's been panicking because I think somehow I've got Streamlabs hidden away, and it keeps blocking everybody's comments. I've got to go back and kill it off, because I don't use Streamlabs. I've no idea how it's got in there.
I've got the same problem. I've recently started using Twitch for doing live streams on the Stadia Arcadia channel, and for some reason it has Stream Elements bot in there. I'm like, I can't remove it. I've tried to kill the bot.
Stream Elements, that's the one. Yep.
Yeah, but so I have a Stream Elements bot fighting a Streamlabs bot, and I'm getting mixed messages come out all the time. It's really frustrating.
Godzilla and Godzuki having a crack at it in there. Yeah, that's brilliant. Tommy, thanks ever so much again, mate, and good luck with your new channel. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the graphics on that video that will teach me finally how to play NBA. Thanks for
teaching how to play it badly.
Well, just anything will be better than nothing, mate, to be frank. Thanks very much, chat, and we'll catch up again this same time next week with a whole new guest. And have a good evening, and take very good care of yourselves. And I'm out of here.
See you later.
Cheers, mate.